Hello, everyone. Welcome back. You are watching the Zenith Glow Astrology YouTube channel. My name is Christina, and I am an astrologer, and I will be your host on this lovely day. Whatever day you are watching this, I hope it is lovely. In this video, we are talking about the upcoming new moon in Virgo, which is on August 23rd. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, I just want to let you all know that if you are interested in learning astrology, I do have an astrology course available now for beginners. So if you're new to astrology, if you want to flesh out your pre-existing knowledge to fill in some of the gaps, or just to understand how all of this works so that you can take the information that you get from me and apply it to your own chart, this course is for you. So that is available on my website, and I will post a link to that below. All right, thanks so much for letting me get that out of the way, folks. Let's talk about this Virgo new moon that's coming up. So I also recently posted an article on Substack if you want to check that out because it is related to this. We just had a Jupiter-Venus conjunction this week, which was actually forming a larger aspect pattern along with Black Moon Lilith and the north and south nodes of the moon, creating a kite aspect. It was actually a little bit more tense energy than some people were predicting it would be or picking up on because it was a kite, right? We have an opposition aspect within a kite. It creates a little bit of tension. Having Black Moon Lilith involved brings in a little bit of the shadow. So if you had personal placements in your chart that were being impacted by that, you may have picked up on some of the more challenging energies that were inherent in that configuration. Otherwise, yes, of course, Venus conjunct Jupiter is a beneficial aspect. It's something that is usually considered a blessing. Cancer is a sign that both of those planets vibe pretty well in. But again, there was kind of a larger configuration going on at that time. And the South Node in Virgo was the peak of that aspect pattern. And again, I talk about all of that in the article. So if you want to dive a little deeper into what all of this means, it is relevant to what we are going into now. So this isn't really just about the new moon in Virgo. It is, and I'm going to focus just on that event. But I want to mention that this new moon is actually acting as like a portal or a segue into eclipse season. That's right, we are about to enter eclipse season. Yay! We're there once again. Gotta love those super intense eclipses. Our last eclipse season was back in March, this last spring. So it's been approximately 6 months, and we are now entering a new eclipse season in September. So again, I'm going to talk about the eclipses in their own videos because they deserve to have their own special emphasis. But just to give you a heads up, we do have a lunar eclipse in Pisces on September 7th, and then we have a solar eclipse in Virgo on September 21st. So we are very much entering eclipse season. We tend to feel eclipses about 7 to 8 weeks before they actually come to fruition. So the energy is beginning to build. And once again, this new moon in Virgo is part of that sequence of energy. And that really is kind of like a sequence. It's like a wave that we're catching as we're moving into this season of change and transformation. So if you're wondering about the eclipses and how they might impact you, you need to look at your chart because whether an eclipse impacts you or not, I mean, we're all going to be impacted by them to a certain degree. But when eclipses make direct aspects to planets, especially personal planets or major angles in your chart, you're going to feel that very acutely. It's going to be very in your face kind of energy. And eclipses are really intense. They bring huge change and transformation. I also want to mention that eclipses actually do carry an energy of potentially bringing in soulmates or twin flames or divine counterpart contracted types of relationships. That's not for everybody, obviously. This is a case by case situation. But when we are meant to have those types of relationships, eclipses are the time that usually act as seed points for the beginnings of those things to come into fruition in our lives. So, and we're going to talk a little bit about that because it did come up when I was looking at the astrology for this new moon. Because again, this new moon is not just like its own little solitary event that's happening outside of the eclipse window. It is very much a part of the eclipse energy. So let's talk about why that is. First and foremost, once again, the new moon in Virgo is happening on August 23rd. It will become exact at 2:06 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So apply that to your own time zone. And it's going to be happening at 0 degrees 22 minutes of Virgo. Okay. So that in and of itself is significant, right? Because if you know a little bit about numerology, you know that that 0 degrees is an important number, right? The 0 point, the 0 is actually, yes, it's the 0 point. It's the infinite. It's the everything and the nothing. It's the paradox. It's the beginning and the end. It's the point where you are neither here nor there, but there is infinite potential for everything. Okay. And that very much is part of the energy going on right now with this eclipse. I do believe that my microphone muffles background noise, but if you hear a lot of like grumbling and chewing in the background, my dog is working on a bone right now. So sorry about that. uh, so, yes, we definitely have a lot of this energy of potential brewing at this time. And this actually began with the conjunction between Venus and Jupiter this last week. That was sort of like our first little launch pad into this energy, the first little taste of this energy. And then we really walk through the door with this new moon in Virgo. So let's see. Why don't we go to the chart? We'll take a look at the chart to see what is happening, y'all, with the astrology. Okay, can you all see that? I hope you can. Okay, so several things are going on here. And the only additional object that I included in this particular chart is asteroid Mary Magdalena because she is playing a very prominent role at this time. So we have, the new moon, which is the sun and the moon overlapped, conjunct at the 0 degree mark in Virgo. Now, there are some very, very intense aspects happening. Let's talk about the most intense one first and foremost. The new moon is going to be in conjunct or quincunx, whichever term you prefer, with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in the early degrees of Aries, as well as in conjunct with Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. Each of those points, Neptune and Saturn, Pluto, are forming a sextile to each other. So, students, what does that mean? What kind of aspect pattern is that? It is a yod. This is a yod configuration that is happening through transit between all of these planets. And I've talked about this. I can't even remember which event it was, but we had another yod that happened not too long ago. And it does bring in intense energy. Those inconjunctions are no joke. They are one of the most difficult aspects to deal with because the planets are in different elements and modes from each other. So it's like they totally don't understand each other. They don't really have any common ground. It's sort of like running into detours. It's like being literally pushed off your path and in a totally different direction. So, like if you're riding a bike and then all of a sudden you fall down a sewer grate that you didn't know was there. So that is the kind of energy that's happening here. We have this Pluto in early Aquarius, and it is aspecting Saturn, which is conjunct Neptune in early Aries, right? That's an, outer planets, that's an ongoing aspect that we've been feeling that energy. It's nothing new. Those planets are in agreement with each other. They're, wanting to start something new. They are bringing in new dimensions of consciousness to the collective. It's an ongoing thing. But this in conjunction that they are both forming, or all of them are forming with the new moon, brings in some tension. It brings in some intensity. It's complex energy. It's difficult energy. But the Yod configuration in astrology is also known as the finger of God, both because the triangular shape of the aspect pattern kind of looks like a little finger that's pointing, and because this aspect pattern tends to carry with it themes of challenge, but also reward. And, part of the challenge is this call to destiny. It's this pull towards your soul's calling, or pull towards what the divine wants for you. And, as the divine, we could also say the divine within ourselves, right? Our very soul itself. So you could say then that we are being redirected through this new moon. Okay. And we did just go through a Lionsgate period, right? We just had a bunch of activations. We had a bunch of clearing of energies, especially with that full moon in Aquarius recently. So now that we've done a lot of clearing, we are getting ready to jump into something totally brand new, which will really be introduced through eclipse season. And this Virgo new moon is kind of acting like the doorway between those two events, right? So, Yod configuration happening. First and foremost, that's the most intense thing I would pick out of this bunch. But there's more going on, of course. First of all, Mercury is the ruler of this new moon because it is the ruler of the sign of Virgo as well as the sign of Gemini. Mercury is in Leo right now. It is recently direct. So, fortunately, we have a direct motion of Mercury. But Mercury also, again, rules Gemini. Now, within the sign of Gemini, we also have Uranus at 1 degree. It is aspecting the new moon as well, but it is doing so through a square. So we have Mercury ruling both of these planetary configurations, the two luminaries at the early degrees of Virgo, and then Uranus at the beginning of Gemini. It's bringing this Leo energy into both of those signs. Okay. So we have a prominent Leo energy. To me, this very much feels like we just went through this Leo season. We just went through a period where Mercury was retrograde in Leo. We just went through Lionsgate. And now Mercury is direct. So it's already gone back over things. It's already reviewed. It's gone into its own little underworld process and brought up into consciousness what it needed to. And it's ready to carry that forward. So it is taking that, I guess you could say, Leo epiphany, Leo awareness, Leo flavor of energy, and it is infusing it into these two different points at the time of the new moon. So the new moon itself, which is the moon and the sun conjunct at the 0 degree of Virgo, and then it's also influencing Uranus in the early degrees of Gemini, and then Gemini is squaring the new moon. So we very much have some higher consciousness coming in, but it is very much influenced by this Leo energy. So even though this new moon symbolizes the time in which we are stepping into Virgo season, that's another thing I wanted to mention is we have the autumn equinox at September 22nd. On September 22nd. So, literally the day before this new moon. So, the new moon is part of that equinox portal as well. So even if there was no equinox, we could say this new moon is a portal, but because it is part of the equinox, that is extra emphasized at this time, right? This is also a time when we enter equinoxes or solstices when the veil is thin, right? So I would definitely anticipate that you could be receptive to some potential spiritual experiences, some signs and synchronicities, some messages from your spirit guides, that type of thing, whatever floats your boat, take it if it resonates. But we are definitely in that kind of energy at this time. And it is very potent energy. And there is a little bit of intensity, though. There is kind of it's almost a little bit like full moon energy. And I know that maybe is controversial to say because it's a new moon. It's very much a new moon. It's a new beginning. But again, the 0 is everything and nothing, right? It's the threshold on which we are perched between two different realities, two different worlds, two different potential manifestations. And so there is this energy, especially through that yod, and especially through this square that we are seeing here. There's this energy of kind of letting things go. Because as we perch on the threshold and as we're preparing to shift into the next phase, into the next whatever it's going to be, we simultaneously have to let go of whatever we were holding on to. And that might be what Mercury has realized after its retrograde period. Like, hey, I just went back over all this stuff. I connected with my inner child. I connected with my heart. I know what I want. I know what lights me up. I know what brings me joy. I know what doesn't. And I need to let those things go now because they're no longer part of me. They're part of the old timeline. I love those things. I love myself. I love that part of my life, but it's no longer part of my future path. What makes this energy uncomfortable is we recognize the need to let go of the past, but we do not yet know where we're going or what waits for us ahead on the path. It's sort of like we're being asked to take steps without being able to see what's in front of us. It is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and we are getting ready to cross the chasm, and we cannot see the path. We cannot see the beam that we are walking across. We just have to have faith and trust that we're going to be held and we're not going to fall into the abyss as we attempt to seek out the Holy Grail. Super nerdy reference. Hope you all enjoyed that. Okay, let's keep going with the aspects before I get too much into the interpretation of everything. So, another challenging aspect happening at this time is we have Venus at 27 degrees of Cancer, and she is squaring Chiron at 26 degrees of Aries. So, again, we have, I mentioned a little bit about relationships, right? Twin flamey, divine counterparty, soulmatey type things going on during eclipse season, that is starting to be introduced again because it's kind of like we are peering into a magic mirror during this time of the Virgo new moon. So we're not like fully into whatever that reality is yet, but we're starting to get glimpses of it and we're making the decision to go through the portal, right? And part of that is this relationship type energy for those people that it resonates. Okay, obviously it's not going to apply to everyone. And if it isn't like a romantic relationship type deal for you, it very much can bring up just relationships in general, whether you are already partnered with someone or whether those are platonic relationships, family relationships, friendships, things like that, coworkers, any kind of relationship really, because it's Venus, right? Venus is how we relate to other people. Being in Cancer, she really wants us to feel safe and secure in ourselves and to have these good boundaries. But she also has this very nurturing quality, this desire to help other people, to listen, to reach out and connect on an emotional level with other people. But Chiron sort of has this woundedness that it's bringing in. And it's not that everyone has a Chiron and Aries wound in their chart, but Chiron through transit is highlighting themes of potential Arian wounds that we may carry. And it is kind of this juxtaposition between the individual self and our unique individual destiny and path that we seek to follow, and the desire to proclaim what is ours, the desire to stand up for ourselves, to defend that destiny, and to follow that unique path, and the discomfort that that can bring to our relationships, and the ways that I don't want to say compulsion, because it's not like we can't control ourselves, but it's like a necessity to follow the path that we recognize, the way that that can kind of stir up feelings of insecurity in us, right? It kind of pushes our boundaries and it kind of stirs up emotions. That's a huge theme at this time. Emotions are definitely being stirred at this time. And in my Substack article, I actually talk about the importance of the mutable signs in astrology and what makes mutable signs different from, let's say, fixed signs or cardinal signs. And one of the things I mention in there, and I highly recommend you just go read the article, it's not very long. But one of the things I mentioned is that mutable signs kind of bring in a little bit of chaos. They kind of stir the pot a little bit. When things become too fixed or too settled, too set in a certain direction, uh, mutable energy will kind of come in and mix it up, sort of like a tornado blowing a bunch of stuff in a cyclone, and then everything kind of settles. And then when it settles, everything is in a new place. Something new is created out of the chaos. And so that can be one of the qualities or one of the characteristics of mutable energy. And so that's something that's kind of happening here during this time, even though Cancer and Aries are actually cardinal signs, but I'm talking about the flavor of energy in general of this new moon as a whole at this time. We have emotions that are being stirred that might kind of poke at old wounds and might create some discomfort in our relationships. So that's another difficult aspect that's happening at the time of this new moon. The other thing that's going on is we have asteroid Mary Magdalena. Okay, so she is the divine feminine. She is the feminine aspect of the Christ consciousness, right? So very, very high frequency energy. There's this octave of unconditional love at the highest frequency. There's this feminine energy of just being and receiving that comes through her. She is actually aspecting all the outer planets at this time because she's at 1 degree of Leo. So she is, forming harmonious aspects. She's trine to the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries. She is sextile to Uranus in Gemini, and she is opposite of Pluto in Aquarius. So this is actually, this is pretty intense energy. Any body, any planet, anything that comes into opposition with Pluto is going to experience some profound intensity because that's just the nature of Pluto, right? So we can anticipate, and because it's an opposition aspect, once again, we have this implication of relationships. We have this implication of mirroring coming through other people. So just keep in mind that something is being stirred up here. This might be happening a little bit more subtly, but it's actually got a very distinctive spiritual kind of vibe to it. There is something coming in that is extremely spiritual, okay? Something shifting us on our trajectory, helping us with our soul path, our destiny, our spiritual purpose. But there can be a little bit of tension that comes through that as well. And sometimes we, get mirrored by our relationships, and it's not really fun what we see. It's not always fun what we see in the mirror. Think about that Michael Jackson song, Looking at the Man in the Mirror. So, one good thing that we have going on, or I don't want to say good thing because it's not that everything else that's happening is bad, it's more just tricky, sticky kind of energy. But one more harmonious aspect that we have happening at this time is we have Jupiter at 16 degrees of Cancer, and it is forming a harmonious aspect to the nodal axis. So it will be trine with the north node and sextile with the south node. This is great because, again, even though it's not at the same degree as the new moon in Virgo, the south node is in the sign of Virgo. It's still carrying that Virgo energy. And then again, if you look at my Substack article, I talk about how Virgo is kind of like the tone for this season. It is the predominant tone as we move into this eclipse season. It is a very particularly prominent energy signature that we are dealing with right now. And that south node is pulling our attention to the past And so for each of us, whether you have Virgo placements in your chart or not, we all carry the Virgo consciousness within us on some level. We all deal with this expression of energy at some level. And for each of us, it's calling our attention to past behaviors, past perspectives, um, and wanting us to examine maybe the more negative ways or the less positive or the less higher expressions that we have expressed the Virgo energy so that we can release those things. So, Jupiter is actually giving us this beautiful energy, allowing us to really tap into that inner treasure that I talked about way back when it first moved into the sign of Cancer, the inner treasure within, and that inner security, that inner sense of self that gives us a feeling of being at home in ourselves. It's offering tools and perspectives and opportunities for us to really ground into ourselves. And we might be looking at the past to kind of help us do that, or we might be releasing things from the past that are no longer serving as we recognize what needs to change in order to move forward into our destiny, which is that North Node that Jupiter is trine right now. So, again, taking those inner reserves, those inner treasures, the little pearls within that are our special gifts and talents, and the parts of our shadow that are positive that we have not yet recognized or acknowledged or put to good use. We're able to take those things and put them to use on our path forward as we move into our spiritual purpose, our destiny, aka the North Node. All right. Did I get everything? Yeah, I think I got everything. I think I pretty much got everything. I mean, I will mention that Mercury is also sextile Mars at this time, and Mars is in the sign of Libra. So, once again, we have this theme potentially of relationships, but also of balance and finding harmony kind of coming to the fore. You know, Venus is not directly aspecting Mars, but Venus rules the sign of Libra. So, that Venusian energy is kind of getting funneled into Mars as well at this time. So, again, just re-emphasizing, re-highlighting that relationship energy. So, all right. What else are we going to talk about here, folks? I feel like this is just, I don't know, just a little like, whoa, hey, get out of my face. No. So yeah, there is this really beautiful Virgo theme coming through this eclipse season. And again, I'm sorry to be a broken record, but just go read the article because it's pretty concise and says what it needs to say, but it also at the same time goes into more depth into this topic. And I am much, much more articulate in writing than I am in speaking. So, because I have time to like pause and think about what I want to say and go pull out my thesaurus when I'm being repetitive with words. And yeah. Anyway, um, but we do find ourselves on a precipice right now. We find ourselves on a threshold, and that is symbolized by this Virgo new moon. We are moving through a portal. Okay. And again, eclipse season is the time of transformation. It is the time of change. It is the time of fated events that will alter the course of our lives. That's the whole point of eclipses, right? And we don't always experience eclipses in a direct way, meaning they don't always aspect specific planets or points in our chart. So we're not always going to be disrupted and going through this crazy period of change every single time there's an eclipse season. We get little breaks, right? But then eventually we have an eclipse season that does aspect our chart directly. And when that happens, it is shaking things up. It's stirring the pot of our lives in order to reorient us on our paths. It's like we've been doing things a certain way for a long time, and it's time to get out of that rut, that particular line that we've been moving in, and it's time to shift things around so that we can continue to grow and change and experience new stuff. So, the energy of Virgo, I talk about this in the article, uh, but the energy of Virgo at its core, in its highest expression, is really about getting in touch with the inner light. And the inner light is the soul. It is our connection to spirit. It is our connection to source. It is the purity of ourselves, of our being, apart from our ego, apart from the human personality and whatever other lives we've lived or whatever. It's that essence of who we are. And this is the reason why Virgo folks or people who are being influenced by Virgo energy can sometimes deviate into that like nitpicky, controlling, hypercritical behavior. Love you, Virgos. Love you. But you can do this. You can get that way. Like, no, you're not doing it right. Just give it to me. I'll do it. It's that kind of energy. There's this strong drive to perfect things because on an unconscious level, you have this connection, this knowing, this awareness on some level of the purity of your soul. And so you're unconsciously trying to recreate that or get back to that without realizing that that's what you're doing, right? And so this energy is actually in the air right now because we all have a soul, whether you have Virgo placements or not, obviously. And it's calling our attention to that, right? So we are actually undergoing a purification process through this new moon in Virgo. Um, Anything that we are still holding on to, like I said, anything that is not gonna hang with us for the next chapter, that doesn't belong with the next phase of our lives, it's got to go. And a lot of that stuff has to do with the mind. A lot of it is our thought patterns, our perceptions, the way that we've always considered things to be, right? And we can see this through that configuration with Mercury ruling both the new moon and Uranus, and then Uranus squaring the new moon. So Uranus is like acting to decondition our perception, right? Just as a general blanket thing as it moves through the sign of Gemini, this is one of those things, right? One of the ways that it's being activated at this time. So we're deconditioning. How do we look at ourselves? How do we view our place in the world? Do we juxtapose ourselves to others? Are we comparing ourselves, right? Are we seeking approval from others? Do we put our relationships before we put ourselves first? Do we fill our own cup before we fill the cups of others? All these things are kind of coming up right now because we do have a tendency to want to fit in. We have a tendency to want to belong. We want to be accepted. We want to be loved by other people. We want to feel like we're part of a community. Even if you're super hermetic and introverted like me, you still want to be loved and accepted and acknowledged by other people, right? There's some of that Leo energy coming in. But it's also recognizing that you can't alter who you are in order to make that happen. And we often do that. And it's actually working backwards when we do that, right? Because what we really ideally would do is we would get in touch with the truth of who we are, right? And I think this is a little bit of that Plutonian Aquarian energy coming through as well. You get in touch with your truth and your authenticity. You learn to march to the beat of your own drum. You learn to really resonate, truly, authentically, unfiltered, uncensored. You can still be conscientious and you can still be a kind person to other people. It doesn't mean you're just going to go around like being completely narcissistic or something. But you are being authentic. You are grounded in your center. And that's really what Virgo energy is about. It's about finding your center. Your soul is embodied, right? Virgo is an earth sign. It rules the digestive system. That is our center, our gut, okay? So we must be grounded into our bodies in a physical way. But we're not just here as earth beings, right? Nothing is, it's not all just like mechanical stuff. There's this spiritual level to it as well. But we also can't just be in the spiritual. We have to also be in the physical. And so it's about bringing these two worlds together and becoming soul embodied. And that's really what it is. It's about finding your center. So you are existing in the earth realm, and there is there is a drive to be of service to other people. There is a drive to be spiritually oriented, but you have to do it at this earth level. You have to figure out, how do I bring spirit down into matter? And how does it manifest once it's here? And once we do that, then we can attract the right relationships, right? But it has to start with you. You have to set the tone, you know? You are the frequency setter of your life. You are the frequency setter of your life. I was actually like kind of channeling messages about Virgo in its higher expressions, and one of the messages that came through was creativity prospers in the light of balance. And so it is this idea that what we are creating, what we are manifesting in our reality, it will prosper when we are balanced in ourselves, right? When we can harness our inner light and at the same time be embodied, right? Because we are still in the world. So it's discovering the purity of your soul, the inner wisdom, looking to yourself for answers, trusting that you are whole in and of yourself, right? Yes, we can always try to be better from that ego level, that personality level, but your soul is perfect as it is. You sweet little perfect soul. You're just a little ray of sunshine as you are. And you love yourself as you are, right? That's the idea of this Virgo energy, unconditional love. And unconditional love itself is it's the thing that purifies us, right? Unconditional love. That is the purification, embracing that. It's kind of ironic, right? Because we feel like we need to be perfect in order to be loved unconditionally, but in order to be loved unconditionally, yeah, you have to just embrace yourself as you are. So, and that's true of other people as well, right? So, sorry, I feel like I'm getting a little lost here. Um, a little too into the details. It's a kind of a Virgo thing as well. Lost in the details. But the idea is that through this new moon, let's back up a little. Through this new moon, there's a segue into the eclipse season. The eclipses are bringing us into alignment with our new path, our new trajectory, whatever that means for each of us individually. Perhaps you are aligning with your life's purpose. Maybe you are stepping into a new career. Maybe you are moving somewhere and you're going to be joining a community. Maybe you are changing your routines and trying to alter your physical health, your spiritual, mental, emotional health. Maybe you are attracting new relationships. Whatever it is, we are moving through this portal now, but we have to purify before we get there, right? And so that's part of the process. And it's unconditional love, it's grounding into who you are, and it is allowing yourself to receive what you deserve and recognizing that what you deserve is everything because you are lovable, you are beautiful, you are perfect as you are, kind of thing. You are whole and complete. You don't need something outside of yourself. You don't need answers from other people. You don't need other people to complete you because you are already source incarnate, right? And source is everything. That's the energy right now, okay? This actually primes us for those changes coming in through eclipse season. But it's kind of ironic because the changes coming through eclipse season are things that are being added to us, right? But you don't get those things until you don't need them. If that makes sense. I hope this makes sense. It's like, yeah, it's like you get it once you aren't trying to grasp it anymore. And that's part of the energy. So, part of what's coming through this event is we are once again balancing on the threshold. We are taking the lessons of our past, collecting the wisdom from those things, and discarding the rest. Not discarding in like a, you know, I don't care kind of way, but just like, I don't need to take it with me. I don't need to take this with me anymore. I don't need to carry this anymore. And once again, that's right. I was talking about how a lot of this pertains to the mind, but of course, the mind is also connected and influenced by the heart. connected to and influenced by the heart. So there are emotions that come up as well at the same time. Oftentimes, those emotions are stirred up by our thoughts and by our attachment, our mental attachment to past emotional conditions. Okay. But it's time to let those things go. It's time to let the heaviness go. It's time to let go of anything that is limiting us. And that is really one of the keys is this 0 point energy. It's like there is huge potential. There is infinite potential, but we have to let go of the limiting thought patterns, the limiting perceptions in order to tap into that potential. So again, Uranus deconditioning us so that we can let that go. Virgo wants to control everything in its lower expression, right? There's kind of a fear and insecurity. If I don't make everything perfect, we're all going to die. There's kind of this energy below the surface with Virgo, right? Um, and so Uranus is saying, like, hey, you don't need to hold on to those ways of looking at things anymore. You can let that go. You don't need to hyper control everything, because that is the paradox of all of this, is when we let go and we lean into faith and we surrender in trust and go with the flow. Then it's kind of like improvisational jazz, and the notes are writing themselves as you're playing the music. Like you begin to walk the path as you're walking it. You're crossing that Indiana Jones chasm as you're taking the steps, right? Even though you don't know, is the step going to be supported? But it will. It will. It's part of the game that we're playing right now. And this is a new level of mastery that we're stepping into as spiritual beings, right? It's not easy. It's not easy, but it is necessary for us to move into our higher manifestations. So that is very much what's happening. And so we are shifting our perspective around these things. It's bringing in greater illumination, greater spiritual illumination, really shifting the way that we look at things. And again, as we do that, the path is revealed. So it's all about your perception, we could say. A lot of this is really about your perception. And I do believe this is one of the hallmark characteristics of having Uranus and Gemini. All the outer planets are bringing really important lessons and huge transitions and, shifts in collective consciousness. But I have been particularly focused on Uranus because I think it's extra important during this time and extra needed by humanity to have that deconditioning. Because again, your thoughts create reality. And if your thoughts are stuck in these old patterns, guess what? Reality is not going to change. So we always have to shift our ways of thinking if we want to change what we are creating. Wasn't there that quote by Albert Einstein? I'm going to totally butcher it, but you get the gist, that whatever problem you're dealing with cannot be resolved with the same level of consciousness that created it. So it's like you have to change your perception, you have to change your vantage point, you have to shift your consciousness if you want to change reality. And that is the same thing for collective humanity, but also for our individual path as well. That is what this new moon is about: shifting your perception, relinquishing the need to control everything, stepping into infinite possibility. Like, seriously, play around with it. Play around with it. What is possible? And if you find yourself going, well, no, that wouldn't happen, that might be a red flag. Okay, maybe that's an old thought pattern that I need to do away with. Maybe it's not really so much about calculating and logistically figuring out what could or could not happen. Maybe that's not really the point. Maybe the point is to break down the stagnancy of those old thought patterns, the rigidity of those thought patterns, right? It's not that, a winged Pegasus is actually going to fly in and throw some buried treasure in your lap. It's that your unwillingness to even consider something wild as a potential is actually limiting these other more grounded possibilities that could come in. Does that make sense? It's that limitation that we're stuck in. It just keeps manifesting the same things over and over again. And so that's what we are trying to shift. So, in a weird way, it's. feel like I said this in one of my recent videos, so I'm sorry to repeat it, but it's still that same idea. It's like, aim for the moon, because even if you miss, you're still going to land amongst the stars, right? Shoot for the moon. It's that same idea. It's like expand your consciousness, broaden what's possible. Don't hold on to limitation and rigidity. Just be open. Just wait. And again, there is this aspect coming in with Mary Magdalena aspecting all the outer planets and this Leo energy of the heart. And it's like we are receiving divine downloads at this time. The veil is thin, it is the equinox, right? So be open, because if you spend all your time thinking about what's not possible or how you need to do X, Y, and Z and cross it off your list, because if you don't, then your entire world is going to collapse, which, by the way, is all rooted in fear, right? All this need to control is just an illusion to try to keep away fear and the potentials that fear imposes on us. So, if you can open yourself to flow, it will completely alter your perception. And when you alter your perception, you step into that 0 point energy. And when you step into the 0 point energy, that's when miracles can manifest. That is when you can be pleasantly surprised by what comes in. Because there's something, it's that Rumi quote, what you are seeking is seeking you, but you have to be open to receive it. And there are blocks for each of us in our own little unique ways that stop those things from coming in. And that's what this new moon is really about, is clearing those blocks. And when we do that, yeah, we're going to step into a whole new reality. We might get some kind of opportunity. There might be something on offer for us as we move into eclipse season. Because again, this is a primer for eclipse season. This is the portal into the eclipse season. So, whatever change and transformation is coming your way, there could be this beautiful harmony coming in, some kind of balance. You could be offered something. There could be some kind of a contract presented to you on a 3D level, right? A job opportunity, a new house, something. Or for some of us, for some of you, you might be welcoming in a new relationship, right? Maybe you're stepping into a new community. Maybe you're connecting with like-minded people. So again, open to the possibilities and follow the path. It will reveal itself step by step as you take each step, and you have to walk with faith and trust. And that is the challenge of the Yod aspect pattern at this time, because we don't want to do that. It's uncomfortable. We want to have that control. We want to know what the next step looks like and how long we're going to have to step on it, and who else might be there when we're on that step. But we don't get to know that, and that's not the point. The point is to move into the 0 point, which is the master creator manifester reality. And yeah, there's infinite potential, and we all have the ability to do this. So yes, think about what you want, but don't overly attach to the specifics, and be willing to just be open and receive what is coming to you, because there are going to be lots of signs and synchronicities coming to you during this time. If you are open to receive them, you are going to get the instructions for your next step to take, okay? So, I hope that all made sense. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for hanging out with me. Please consider liking and subscribing this video, you guys. It really, really helps me out, because YouTube doesn't let you do anything unless you have a certain number of subscribers or likes, etc. It's all part of the way the game is played. So it really helps me out if you do that. If it's in your heart to do that, thank you. And if you want to see how the upcoming eclipse season may be impacting you and you don't know how to look at your chart, again, I have an astrology course. If you want to learn how to do that, you can do that. I'll post the link below. It's all in the course. But if you don't feel like taking the course, I also do readings, and I would be happy to take a look at your chart to see what might be coming your way this eclipse season. So I will post a link below where you can book a reading with me. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. I love you all. I hope you have a beautiful new moon, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.